yourself. So I had this big idea a long time ago of this message, and I thought this is the perfect Sunday for it. And I was getting closer and closer to it, and I was preparing for it, and we bought stickers for it, so make sure you get a sticker on the way out. And then, like a couple weeks ago, after halfway through Faithful, the last series that we were in, I thought, there's a lot of crossover here. Like, if you're here every single week, it's pretty repetitive. So, the idea, the concept that I was thinking about was, and I'll just tell you, I'll preach it another day, but the idea was that we all started the same place in life, as well as in faith. In life, we start off as babies, infants, that can't feed ourselves, right? We can't do anything on our own. Everything has to be done for us. In our faith, we start off the same way. When you're just crossed that line of faith, when you're wrestling with what God is about and who we are and all of the questions that we have, when you're first starting to wrestle with those things, someone has to be there in order to help you with it. But eventually, just like a baby, eventually you grow up a little bit older. You can grab the fork on your own, and then you start to feed yourself on your own, and then hopefully sooner or later you start to make the sandwiches for yourself, and you can actually go out and shoot the animal, drag it back home, grill it up, and feed yourself. Like the whole process, you can do that all on your own, right? And it's the same with faith. That is the whole idea, that you shouldn't be reliant and dependent on somebody else to force feed you your faith. You need to own your own faith, so do it yourself. Now, I believe that being at church is beneficial, helpful, all the things. But as I got into the message, I thought, this is faithful all over again, just in like one morning instead of 6 weeks. And we just came out of that, and I thought, for my own sanity, I'm going to shift and pivot because the stickers were already bought. So I was like, how are we going to do this? So I came up with another idea, and this is a saying that you've probably seen around, heard around. I think it's actually in the men's bathroom here. I didn't realize that until later. I was like, oh, it is in here. But be the change. Now, if anyone runs up to the bathroom right now, be like, you'll see it. Be the change you wish to see in the world. Be the change that you wish to see in the world. But this idea, this concept, this understanding is very simple. It's very easy. And I think it's one that most of us can get behind. Because we get to the moments in our life where we just get frustrated. We see the world in a very specific light, and we want something to change because we see the errors in the world, and we see how people are actually hurting each other. And if they would just change it just a little bit, it would be so much better. But then we don't do anything about it. Case in point, and this can be big. This can also be very, very small. This is a smaller one, and it's one that I share in our premarital meetings that I have. It's about my wife and I and our learning curve that we had into marriage. So we got married. I was very young. I don't say that like as a dig on my wife. She was also very young, but I was younger. Especially in maturity and my all that stuff. So I was 22 years old, just right out of college. We just graduated. And we moved up here, and we'd gone through premarital counseling, and we thought we had everything. You always feel like you have everything figured out. Okay, we did everything we should have. All of the pieces are in the right place. Our ducks are in the order. We got this under control. We got this. And the first job I could find up here was construction, which is not an easy job. But part of our understanding, our agreement, we wanted to be a very team-oriented marriage. So across the board, everything should be even, equal. No one's carrying too much weight on themselves. So Amy had decided that she was going to cook, so I decided I was going to clean for her. I was like, all right, if you're going to cook the meals, I'll clean the kitchen for you. Now, there's a couple issues that we learned later on. When I was doing construction, I was coming home hungry. I was working all day long, sweating all day long, hungry. I'd get home, and my beautiful, amazing, brand new wife, she would cook our meals for us. But the way that she did the math in her head was like, well, I'm an adult, so I'm going to make twice as much that I would normally make for me. And that math is sound logic until you add in a 22-year-old incredibly hungry person with a metabolism that I had back then was outrageous. Don't have it anymore, unfortunately. But I was hungry, and she would make, and I was like, this is so wonderful. And it's just the appetizer. I'm like, where is the rest of the food? And I was just hungry all the time because I had this tension of do I say something to her, or Because, like I said, brand new in marriage. Like, I don't want to make her upset or feel bad. That's why I'm telling you this in public on stage later on. The reverse was even worse. The reverse was that I was supposed to be cleaning, but like I said, I came home tired every single night from construction, and I quickly came to the rationale. I was like, wait, there's only 2 of us in the house. That's not a lot of dishes. So rather than do like work every single night, I figured that if we could just like allow the sink to fill up a little bit more, and it would just make it worth it, like just one fell swoop, just clean the kitchen a couple times a week would be enough. Like that's more efficient with my time and energy. And the end result of that is that our kitchen was dirtier way more often than it was clean. And my poor wife is just like, she's working hard to make sure that the meals are done, and then she like looks around the kitchen, is just disgusting. And it's all on me. And I'm like, this is not. And here's the problem. This is the most embarrassing part. It took us like, let's see, we moved in one apartment, another apartment, our house that we bought, and then we were in there for a while before I finally was like, hey, this is a bad system. This is a bad system. We got to change it. We've got to change it, right? This is that moment where I was like, something needs to give, and it's not going to be our relationship. We need to change something that we both agreed upon. We got to change it. Now, before I get any further, just to clear the air, we're going to talk about a lot of topics. We're going to talk about a lot of ideas that I've had. And I just want to be clear, first and foremost, this is not about politics. This is not about politics. Turn and say this to the person next to you. I'm serious. If you didn't say it, you might not agree. I'm not making a political statement. At the end of today, if someone walks out of this room and says, like, I need to go protest something because my pastor told me, you heard incorrectly. That is not what I'm saying. It's not what I'm saying. But this is difficult because we feel things in life, and we feel strongly about things in life because we see it, we think it, we understand it, and we have a very specific perspective. And it's like, why does the world not fit what I'm seeing? Because it doesn't make any sense, and you want to do something about it. But this is the challenge. This is the difficult part. Because we don't always know if it's the right thing or the right timing, right? It's not always the right time. It's not always the right time, but sometimes it is. And it's not always the right subject, but sometimes it is. This is where it gets really messy. This is where it gets really difficult, is figuring out what is the right subject. When is it enough? When is it a big enough subject that I can actually get up on my feet and go do something about it? And then even if it's the right thing, there's still some wrong times in there that if it's the right thing but the wrong time, it's still the wrong thing to do. So we've got to figure this out. And it's gray, and it's messy, and it's hard, and it's difficult, and there's relationships involved. I'll tell you real quick, driving is never the right time. Just a heads up. When you're driving, that's never the right time to make a judgment call. Your horn is supposed to protect people. It's a device to allow people to know that there's danger. It is not a figurative finger that you're sticking up. And if you don't use a figurative but a literal, that's between you and Jesus. So you can work that out on your own. But driving is not the right time to tell someone that they're wrong. Driving is not the right time to figure out, like, this is the wrong thing. You're doing the wrong thing. That's not it. That is not it. Now, in our world, in our nation, there's been a shift, and this is where I know it can kind of cross over to politics, so I'm going to try real hard not to. But there's been a shift in the last several generations that the more, if you go back in our history, the regular thing to do that most people did was go to church. Like, they were a part of a church. They would say that they went to a church. Like, everyone had a connection and a tie to a church. It was the common thing to do in our nation, in our society. Over the last several generations, though, there's been a trend where people are actually leaving the church. And this has actually created a void, and we're going to talk about a couple of those voids real quick, because I think this is something that we all feel strongly about. And they can be from different angles and different perspectives, and that doesn't mean that the other person is wrong. It's just a different angle. But a couple of voids that have happened, first and foremost, is that as people have left the church, where the church used to support and do things in the community, we've now allowed something else to step into that spot. And a lot of it actually is the government. We're like, hey, can you get a program started to step in here? Because there's a void here. Someone has to take care of the community. Who's going to do it? And the church is like, well, we're empty right now, so we don't have enough people to do that anymore. And this is a tension. And I'm not saying that the church is perfect or that it's correct all the time. And trust me, there's been moments of a lot of moments of abuse and scandal, all kinds of stuff that the church has gotten wrong. But I think one of the things that the church used to get right a lot was the ability to support its community. There's no reason for a government to step in if the church did what the church should do, which is represent Jesus in their own communities. That's just me being honest. That's my heart. Now, another gap, another void that is created as people have left the church happens to be within the idea of morality as a whole. Morality used to have the foundation of Judeo-Christian ethics. And I'm not saying that we get it right all the time. That's not what I'm saying at all. However, there was a commonality. There's a foundation built that most people could understand. This is where we move from. This is the starting place that everybody can kind of agree on. But as people have left church, that is fractured. And morality in our society it's all of a sudden situational ethics. Every single direction that you turn, everybody has their own slant and own understanding. And the problem is we've had all kinds of people telling other people what's right and what's wrong and yelling at each other and being all kinds of upset. That's not what I'm talking about, but we can always feel that depth of frustration, anger, pain, whatever it might be. We feel that very deeply. We want to do something about it. This is what I want to talk about. When you feel something, it doesn't have to be about politics, but when you feel something so deeply. Now, one of those subjects that we absolutely should do something about is parenting. Parenting absolutely should be one of those areas that you just jump in. My brother-in-law taught me a few things. Not a lot, but a few things. He did tell me a few things. And he taught me a few things about parenting. First of all, that parenting is about picking the right fights. It's not about fighting every single, if I fought with my son every single time that I was like, okay, Luke, we got to do this right. And if I looked to try to get him to be perfect every single time, the poor kid would just he would just quit. He'd be like, okay, whatever, Dad, you do. I can't do this. I can't be perfect. And he's absolutely right. He's not perfect. None of us are perfect. So you can't overparent in that way. So it's picking the right fights, knowing when the battles that you should be actually engaging in. Those are important. That's the first piece that's important to know. The second piece about parenting that he taught me, the decision to get up off the couch. Once you've determined this is the right battle to fight, you have to get up off the couch to go fight it. You can't be yelling from the living room when he's in the bedroom hey, don't do that anymore. He just can't keep on doing it. You got to get up off the couch and actually go parent. That's what that's about. We can feel this strongly about things, right? We feel so strongly about things. But when we feel strongly about things, they quickly turn into agendas, right? Because other people feel strongly the same way that we do. We join up with their mission and their ideas and see people that see the world similarly to us, and all of a sudden the thing that was a strong feeling turns into an agenda. And agendas have this tendency to actually surpass the value of individuals. And I think that's a bad idea. The moment that your agenda becomes more important than the person that's sitting across from you, that's a bad system. You're devaluing someone where you should be loving them. We've got to figure out how to navigate these two things at the same time. So truly, what is the higher value? That's a hard question. The person in front of you or a system change? I don't know. I think it's situational sometimes. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it isn't. Where's the line? It's so much easier if it's black and white. And when you see somebody else as wrong, it's a very, very short line before you start to see them, especially if they're very vocal, as an enemy. Andy Stanley has this great quote. He says, just because someone considers you their enemy, you're not required to return the favor. I love that. You can be in absolute disagreement with someone, and they can have elevated voice, and they can be angry, and they can call you all kinds of names. Just because they consider you an enemy doesn't mean that you're required to consider them one. And I believe that if we're following Jesus, we're not having a bunch of these when it's just people that we're facing. Right? People can have a difference of opinion, It doesn't mean that they're an enemy. One thing that as I was studying, that really just stuck out to me is that over and over I see this, that Jesus is more concerned, Jesus is more concerned with an individual following him than a crowd yelling about him. Because people and crowds are fickle. I mean, think back we talked about this last week at Easter. Jesus, when he entered the city of Jerusalem, had people screaming and shouting just about his arrival. They were so excited that he was there. And in a matter of days, another crowd, some of the same like crossover people, are screaming and shouting, crucify him, crucify him. People are fickle. You can be upset and incorrect. You can be both of those things at the same time. And a crowd can be loud and wrong. They can coexist. Like that's a thing that happens. Just because there's numbers doesn't mean it's right. And just because it's loud doesn't mean it's right. And just because you're upset doesn't mean it's right. We have to figure out how to navigate with other people. You know, Paul actually talks about this in one of the letters that he wrote. Just this challenge of figuring out our own mentality of how to do things right in this world. And this is a struggle that we all face with. It's Romans chapter 7. For I do not do the good I want to do, but the evil I do not want to do, this I keep on doing. You ever feel that? Like most days I feel like that. That's what I feel. Like this is what I feel all the time. I'm trying to do the right thing. I'm trying to do the good thing. But so often I do the exact thing that I don't want to do instead of the thing that I want to do. And in this life and in this world, we only have so much time and so much energy. We have to figure out what are the battles that are worth fighting. And inside of ourselves, as well as outside, in this world that we love, that we live in. What is worth to sacrifice part of your life for? What is it worth? And also, when is the right time? How do we figure out when the right time? We have the right idea, but when's the right time to actually join in? This is a big struggle. This is actually what we're talking about today. Now, one of my favorite historical figures his name is Nehemiah. He's in the Old Testament where we learn about him. He's in about the mid-5th century BC, and he was a super fascinating person, I think. He was born in Babylon in exile. So the nation of Israel had been exiled. They'd been removed from their land, and he was born after the move. So he'd never been to Jerusalem. He'd never been there. He didn't grow up in that. He grew up in Babylon as an exile, as a Jew in Babylon. Now, interesting thing, somehow, in a very quick, short period of time, he actually got this very high, very respectful, very honorable position. He was the cupbearer to the king, which I think is that's a huge, if you don't know what the cupbearer is, first of all, you're going to be eating great. That's fantastic. It's can you take a bite? Yes, I would love to take a bite of the best food in the land. That would be awesome. The other part is it's life and death every single day. Am I going to die after this bite? I don't know. It's probably going to be a pretty tasty morsel, though. I'll tell you that much. So this is his job, right? Cupbearer to the king. The responsibility was to make sure that the king wasn't going to get poisoned. And that was his job, which is interesting to me. Anyway, so Nehemiah at this time, he has heard from some people that visited the city of Jerusalem. And they report back to him and tell him kind of what's going on. In verse 3 of chapter 1 of Nehemiah, they said to me, those who survived the exile are back in the province are in great trouble and disgrace. So there's a group of people that they didn't all get exiled. They somehow escaped, but they're back in the area, but they are in great trouble and disgrace. Why? Because the wall of Jerusalem is broken down, and its gates have been burned with fire. I'm not sure what other way you can burn things, but in this specific instance, it's with fire. So the wall's broken down, gates have been burned, it's in disarray. It is not good. This is not a good scenario. This is not good. What is Nehemiah's response here? In verse 4, when I heard these things, I sat down and wept. Kind of like Caleb with the pig. For some days, I mourned and fasted and prayed before the God of heaven. he feels this so deeply. Other people have seen this. Other people have experienced this. Other people have the same information. But with Nehemiah, he feels it different. It just hits differently for him. And just like in this moment for Nehemiah, what is this for you? In your life, in your world, what breaks your heart? Because I believe that when we have something that deeply that affects us, I believe that's an echo to God's heart as well. That when we are following Jesus, when our mind, our heart is in line with him, our heart will break what breaks his heart as well, what breaks God's heart as well. So ask yourself this question. In your world, when you see something, what just grabs a hold of your heart and won't let you go? What brings you to tears? What keeps you thinking about it 20 minutes after you drove past it? Is it students? Is it kids? Is it a specific scenario? Is it missions? What is it in your world that you just can't, when you start thinking, you just can't get over it? What breaks your heart? This is what broke Nehemiah's heart. He continues on. He says, in the month of Nisan, which is apparently when Nissan does a lot of their production. I'm a dad. I can have dad jokes. It's all right. In the 20th year of King Artaxerxes, when wine was brought for him, I took the wine and gave it to the king. I had not been sad in his presence before. So the king asked me, why does your face look so sad when you were not ill? Which is, by the way, this is, if he wasn't sad, there's like a sick burn by the king. Like, why does your face look like that? Like, okay. Why does your face look so sad when you are not ill? This can be nothing but sadness of heart. And this is interesting because at this moment, this is a big moment. Nehemiah, if you don't understand the context here, a king at this time in the history of the world can just end your life if they have a bad feeling from you. Like if you show up and you're just a bummer that day, they're like you're bumming them out. They're like, I don't need that business in my life, so you can get out. You can lose your job. You can lose the audience of the king. You can lose your life in an instant. No repercussions. Just done. You made me upset today. You're out, or you're done. You're dead. So this is, it's a great reason for Nehemiah to be very much afraid. But he said to the king, it's a great starter, may the king live forever. Like this is, don't kill me, please. May the king live forever. He continues on. Why should my face not look sad when the city where my ancestors are buried lies in ruins and its gates have been destroyed by fire? Like why wouldn't I feel like this? This is a huge risk that Nehemiah takes. It's like it's either his life or something's going to be done. How many times do we feel that tension in our world? Like, this is going to cost me everything, or I can do something about it. Like, it's going to be one or the other. Are you willing to take that step? Now, a little bit about the gates and the wall being burned down, because I know for a lot of us, we're like, okay, what's the big deal about gates and walls being burned, like in disarray, like destroyed? Is that a big thing? Yeah, it's a real big thing. You are unprotected completely. You at the complete mercy of anybody that's walking by or riding by, or let me put it this way. Here's a story real quick. The other night, like a week or two ago, my wife and I were completely sound asleep. I mean, this is like 1 or 2 in the morning. And a noise comes through our like lives into our room. And I'm just like wide awake instantly. And it's music, and I can't figure it out. And immediately I'm like, well, the TV downstairs must have turned on somehow, some way. I guess that happens sometimes. So I jump out of bed, and I'm like, I'm going to turn the TV off because it's loud. I mean, it is so loud. And I get to about the kitchen, and I look out the window, and there I see a car parked across the street, which is where the music was coming from. It was so loud, I thought it was coming from inside the house. It was outside of the house. Now, I don't know what I was thinking, but my reaction response was to go to the car. So I'm walking downstairs, like stumbling around because I'm half asleep, And then I see that it's a car, and I'm like, well, I better go talk to them. I head to the front door, and thankfully, I don't know if they saw me, I don't know what happened, but thankfully they drive away right at the same time. Now, this is the moment where I realized I didn't have a cell phone in my hand to like call someone or do something. I didn't have a weapon on me. Like I didn't grab one and headed out of the bedroom. I didn't even have pants on. That is what it's like in context to be in the city of Jerusalem. You are just vulnerable. Like anybody can do anything to you. If they're aggressive, if they want to, might makes right in this context. So they can do whatever they want to you in this moment. And that's what this people that are in the city of Jerusalem, that's what they're feeling. And then this is why it means so much to Nehemiah, that this city that used to be so great and means so much to the nation of Israel is now at a loss. So, in this moment, King Artaxerxes, he looks at Nehemiah, and thankfully he's like, so, what do you want to do about that? And Nehemiah thinks about it for a second and says, well, King, I would like to rebuild it. Which I don't know if he's had a game plan the whole time. He's like, is it going to work one or two ways? Or if this is just on the spot, he's like, he just changed in that moment. I'm going to say it. This is opportunity. I'm going to say it. I'm going to do it. It's like, well, I want to rebuild it. And the king's response was, well, how long do you think you're going to be gone? And so he tells him, I don't know if he knew already how long he thought it would take. He's not a builder. He has no idea how long construction takes, but he just throws out a date. He's like, I'll set a date for you. Most of us stop at this point. When we've experienced something in our life and in our world that means a lot to us, and we've just survived it, we feel like we got away with it. We're like, thank goodness we survived the moment. This is where a lot of us stop. And I'll be honest with you, my vision for Canyons Church is not small. It's massive and it's big. And sometimes I talk about it, and I know it can be intimidating at sometimes. But when I'm in a conversation with somebody and that comes up, this is usually where I stop. Like I just inform them, hoping that they're just like, that's awesome. That's great. That is so great. That's exactly where I stop. Because the next step is what Nehemiah does. This is where most of us stop right there. But the next step that Nehemiah says, would you support me though? Like, King, you're letting me live. You're letting me have time off. But now I need something from you. He says, will you give me letters that allow me safe passage through the kingdom, through the land? Not only that, but will you give me a letter so that I can get supplies, so I can do the thing that I need to do to rebuild the wall? He's like, can you also give me your credit card to Home Depot? Like, is that cool with you? Can we just do that? And again, the king's like, yeah, I'll do that, and I'll do one better for you. I'll actually send not only letters, I'll send a security crew with you as well, just to keep you safe along the way. And yeah, I'll provide all of the supplies that you need. This is amazing. There's a big ask, and there's a big answer in this moment. And what I want to remind us is that Nehemiah wasn't perfect. You don't have to be perfect and wait for the perfect moment to pick up a shovel. Right? You don't have to wait until the absolute perfect moment, the right time, and be fully prepared for everything before you start to take action, before you start to do something. Nehemiah does it. I mean, Nehemiah just, the opportunity, the door opened, and he took it, and he walked through it. Now, Nehemiah, the first thing he does, I'm sure it's like a journey to get there, and I'm sure he's evaluating himself the whole time, like, I can't believe I'm doing this. I can't believe we're going. I can't believe I'm on my way to the city of Jerusalem right now to rebuild the wall. This is amazing. I'm sure he's also doing some evaluation, like, I'm not a builder. I have no idea how to do this thing that I've made a big deal about me doing now. And he gets there, and the first thing he does is he inspects the whole wall. He walks around. He wants to make sure that he knows the challenges that he's up against. And after he does that, he kind of brings everyone together that's living there, everybody that's around. He's like, all right, we got to get on the same page here. He gathers them up. He's like, look, you guys are in danger, and you guys are living in disgrace. Like, what this city used to be compared to what it is now is a disgrace. That's a big conversation too. How are they going to respond? He didn't know. But they do respond with, you're absolutely right. We've been waiting probably for someone to say something, to ask us to do something. We just haven't done it ourselves. And they're in. They're like, we're with you. This needs to happen. This has to happen. So step one is get up off the couch. Step two is evaluate. Like, okay, where are we at? What's the struggle? What's the tension? What skills do I have? And what am I going to have to ask somebody to do? And then step three is to not stop. Like once you start, don't stop. Just keep on going with it. Sure enough, Nehemiah and the whole crew that's there, like the first thing that happens when they start to rebuild the wall is some mockers show up. Some people that are like making fun of them, throwing insults at them right away. They show up and they're like, hey, Nehemiah, why do you think you blah, 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 whatever. And Nehemiah responds in like the old man, hey, get off my lawn. Essentially, it's like, hey, this is our boat. We're going to go on a trip. You're not invited. Can you step off, please? Like that's essentially what his response is. The thing that Nehemiah does next is, I think it's incredible. We brush right over it when we read through this scripture. Nehemiah takes an entire chapter. I mean, he didn't write it in chapters, but the next chapter is full of Nehemiah listing out every single person that worked on the wall and what they did. Isn't that amazing? Like Nehemiah 1, he had relationship with the people that he was asking to do the work with. Like he knew them. But then he also listed it. And this thing that they did has survived 2,500 years later. We can read it today. We can read their name today. We can read an accomplishment that they were a part of today. That is called legacy. That's called legacy, when you can actually have something that outlives you, that people can actually be, in awe of, that they respond with, that's amazing. That's incredible. The respect given to them, even 2,500 years later. And what I know about me and what I know about you is that if we don't do something, our legacy won't be something. Like if we just survive and just walk through life and don't actually do anything big, don't actually take any challenges, don't actually take any risks with our life, then there's going to be nothing to write home about. No one's going to write down and then they did the dishes and went to bed. And no one's going to write that down and be like, we have to remember that they did that. No one's going to think that. In order to have a legacy, we have to do something. You got to do something. Now, at this point, the wall is actually getting built. It's about halfway done. The mockers are realizing something. Hey, this is going to change everything for this people group. Like they're going to be protected. We can't just do whatever we want to them at any time. They are protected at this point. They're not just going to be pushovers any longer. And so they up the ante, like they transition their verbal assaults to actual physical assaults on them. And this is, these are just people that are, one, they're not builders. They don't know how to build a wall. Like they're doing other things with their life, but they just said, okay, we need to build the wall. So they step into the role of a builder, whatever that looked like. I guess this is a hammer. How do you use this thing? Like they're just picking up some tools or whatever they need to try to get the job done. And then at the same time, Nehemiah's like, hey guys, if you haven't noticed, it's no longer just verbal assaults. Like we got to watch out for them attacking us as well. And so in one hand, they'd have a hammer, and the other hand, they'd have a sword. Again, these are not warriors, but they do what they have to do. This is a story not about skill, but about will. This is the decision that something is valuable enough. It is worth our time, energy, resources, our life to do something. Nehemiah encourages them all. He's like, hey, don't worry. Protect yourself. God's going to protect us. And if you hear a trumpet, just run to the trumpet because somebody's in danger. Just keep that in mind. Someone's in danger. We're going to help our neighbors out as well. Now, eventually, the wall does get completed. And I love this. Thousands of people, you can read about it in Nehemiah, thousands of people come back to the city of Jerusalem because the wall and the gates are rebuilt. This small group of people did something on behalf of people they didn't even know or know about. People that weren't even there yet. They did something with a future purpose and intent for somebody else. They risked everything for that person that they did not know, that they'd never met before. This is what we do every single week at Canyons Church. Like I said, I got a big vision. I got a big idea of what this could be, and I have hopes and dreams about this. And what we're doing right now is the foundation for those that are not here yet. So as you serve at Canyons Church, as you're part of our teams, as you're doing stuff around here, as you're supporting us financially, I just want to say thank you for today, but more importantly, thank you for tomorrow, because you are directly impacting lives that you will never know, that you may never meet, but you're doing something big and important. So, what's all of this mean? What's all this mean? With your life, do something that matters. With whatever energy, whatever time, whatever you have left, do something that matters. Do something that values individuals, that the end result of it will be that someone knows that there's a God that loves them, whether you say it or whether they feel it with your actions. Now, as far as the church as a whole, the capital C church, we've prioritized some things in church, and I need to apologize about them. One of the things is we've prioritized teaching people not to sin. Like that's been if you talk to somebody on the street, they say, what's church about? Well, church is about making sure that you don't sin anymore. Like we just got to make sure that people sin less. And if you do sin, there's this whole process you got to go through and then got to do. That's what we've informed people. What's really important is to not sin anymore. Let me introduce a different thought for you. The better you are at the Jesus brand of love, where you sacrifice yourself and serve other people, that type of love, the better you are at that, the example that Jesus gave us, the better you are at that, I promise you, you will be sinning less. Like you won't be sinning more, and it won't even stay at the same level. If you love better like Jesus did, you won't be sinning more. That's not the focus. However, if you focus solely on just being more and more disciplined, and I'm going to do this right, and I'm going to be perfect, and I just don't want to sin anymore, and you just try to work really hard not to sin anymore. Yeah, there might be some gradual improvements on not sinning, but you can not sin and still not love. And that's not the emphasis. That is not what Jesus told us to do with this single command. Love others the way that I have loved you. He didn't say, don't sin like I've not sinned. He said, love other people. This is the highest priority. This is the highest value. Now, unfortunately, we do some big, huge projects. We feel something deeply, but we do them for the wrong motivation sometimes. And I just have to give this warning out there. If you do something that's big with the wrong motivation, you're going to hurt everyone that's involved. Like if it's all about you, at the end of the day, you're going to hurt everybody else around. Like you're going to hurt the people that you're serving with. You're going to hurt the people that you're trying to serve. You're going to burn bridges that you didn't even know had access to. So make sure that your motivation is correct. Now, being as, to be stereotypical, you grew up going to churches that told you do this and don't do this, so I was going the same vein. I've got some do's and don'ts for you. So some do's and don'ts. Drew's do's and don'ts. It's a lot of D's. Don't give away your role or responsibility. As far as our communities go, don't give away the responsibility of the role that we have to be able to love our community well. Don't wait for a program to try to do something that we can do. We should be representing Jesus by stepping in first. We should be the first phone call. We shouldn't even have to wait for a phone call to step in. With your children, don't give away your responsibility to lead your children well. Right? This has been a transition for me to understand that God entrusted me to be a father to my son. Why would I ever think, the school's got it. That program over there's got it. No, he'll learn that eventually. No, that'll be taken care of. Don't worry about that. No, we have to, I will not, I refuse to give away that responsibility. Your financial freedom. Just because you think you earned something that you are owed something that it's like, oh man, I gotta do something for myself. Well, is it in the bank account? No? Then don't do it. Because you're giving away your freedom, you're giving away your financial peace, don't do it. Don't give away your attitude. That's a choice. We can be experiencing very difficult situations and still have a good attitude. Attitudes are choice. You don't have to respond the way that you think the world expects you to respond. You can choose a different attitude. You can choose to be happy. Don't give away your faith. Don't allow, like we said at the very beginning, don't wait for somebody else to dictate how well your faith grows. Be proactive that you will do whatever it takes in order for your faith to grow and take the next steps. You know, unfortunately, we outsource some really important things, and we get caught up in spending so much of our time on non-determinative aspects of our life. Don't do that. So let's continue on. I got some more do's and don'ts. In regards to what we just learned from Nehemiah, don't wait for perfection to arrive before you start. Nehemiah didn't wait. He didn't wait for the perfect example or perfect experience. He didn't wait till he learned how to build a wall. He just did it. Don't wait for that. We got to do, this is a positive one, do get an accurate picture of current context with a clear goal in mind. Just like Nehemiah, when you first understand what you're about to do, make sure you see it perfectly. Make sure you see it accurately with the way that it actually is in the world so that you can respond in kind. The next one, don't let opposition deter you from your dream. I mean, people show up, and they're going to show up. The moment that you start down a good path, someone's going to be right there to intercept you, to try to knock you off course. Something's going to happen, and you're going to have to make a decision. Just because there's some opposition, am I going to stop doing what I think is important and valuable with my life? Another one, do be flexible within your plan. This is like what Nehemiah had to realize. He didn't plan on having to have a sword on the wall that he was building, but that was the flex, like, okay, I guess we got to do this now, but we're still going to do the thing that's important. It might look differently than you thought, but be flexible to do something that's worth being flexible for. This is a massive one. Do recognize those on the wall with you. Like Nehemiah, make sure that you are recognizing the people that are serving along with you, that are doing the work with you. Nehemiah is up on the wall doing the work right along with them. He knows them by name. Not only does he know them by name, he does something so that we can talk about them 2,500 years later. This is amazing that he wrote down their accomplishment and included them in this story. Now, I know that we get fired up and we have these big dreams and goals, and then we have those moments where it's like, how am I able to do this? Like, I'm so small. I'm so little in comparison to what I'm trying to do. I don't have all the skills. I don't have the whatever it takes. Like, I don't see how I can even fit in that role. I've never done that before. What I want to encourage you is that God sees you the way that he created you, with the potential to do exactly what he's asked you to do. And you might not see it in yourself yet, but God wants to remind you that you are a son or a daughter of the King, of God, the Most High. Not only that, you are an adopted co-heir with Christ. He has not only your present, but your future set. He's got you taken care of. He sees what you can do. He's asked you to do something. Even if you can't see it yet, he knows exactly the potential that he's placed in you to do and accomplish that what he's asked you to do. Another thing, don't be confused with loud and impactful. I think too often we hear the loud, or we are the loud, like we got a really big idea and we're like, oh, I'm going to tweet that. I don't know if you tweet anymore. But we're like, I'm going to put this on social media. Like, I'm going to do that. Who cares if you put it on social media? Do the thing. That's what's impactful. Don't worry about who's watching you do it. Another don't build an argument. This is one of the last ones I thought of, but don't build an argument for a debate. Build a platform for a conversation. Because the things that we care about a lot, someone's going to care about it a lot as well, and they're going to see it differently than you do. And that doesn't mean that you try to beat them up or prove them wrong or ruin them or whatever it might be, out-debate them. We should be all about building platforms for conversations. Because what I believe is it just might require you to have a relationship with somebody that sees something different in order for you to accomplish the thing that's bigger than both of you see. That God actually might have a bigger plan for you and for that moment, and it's going to require you working with someone that see it differently than you do. Build the platform for a conversation. Couple discussion questions will get you out of here. Sorry, I'm going long. Not sorry. Question number 1. When was the last time that something bothered you enough for you to do something about it? What was the outcome? Question number 2. Have you given away your influence on things that matter most to you? Why? Question number 3. What is the most purposeful thing you could do with your life? And what is holding you back from taking steps towards that? As always, these will be posted on our website. You can go back and find them in the groups tab off to the side of the message. Let me pray real quick. We'll get you out of here. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for everything that you've done for us. God, we believe that you've created us and you've developed us to get us not just to today, but for our tomorrow. That you have ideas and you have plans for us to accomplish big, huge, scary, intimidating things, but things that are so valuable and so important. And I pray that we would do whatever it takes to take those steps. God, I pray that we would trust your voice in our life to know what the thing is that we need to do and when we need to do it. That we would learn who we can do the big, huge projects with. And at the end of the day, our obedience would allow people to return to you. God, we love you. We thank you that you first loved us. In your name I pray. Amen. Thanks for being here with us. We'll see you next week.